Today we're going to make a WATERGATE cake with cover-up icing.
So the cake that I'm baking today comes from Heart of the Home recipes. These are more recipes that come from one of my favorite sources, which are the Cappers Weekly out of Topeka, Kansas. And I have the original Heart of the Home cookbook, and my friend was so sweet. She gave me this cookbook when she found it, I think, in an antique store. And it's more Heart of the Home recipes. So when I was going through the book, I found this wonderful recipe for a WATERGATE cake. Now, I'd had this as a kid growing up. My grandma and grandpa, they were around in the times of Richard Nixon. So if you remember what WATERGATE was, then you'll get a kick out of this cake. So this cake is made with white cake mix. It also takes a package of pistachio pudding. Now, what makes this cake so interesting is that it was super popular back in the 70s. And it got so popular at one point that the shelves of the store couldn't even keep all of this this pistachio jello pudding. So there were a couple of things that contributed to the name WATERGATE cake. So the first one was that because of the nuts that are added to it, in this case we use pecans in the WATERGATE cake, although you can use walnuts. But if you remember the break-ins at the Watergate Hotel under the direction of Richard Nixon, former president, the nuts would be, I guess, the guys who were in charge of breaking into the Watergate Hotel. And the other thing is that this has a really thick frosting with more pistachio instant pudding and some whipped toppings. So that's what, it's supposed to be like a cover-up of the cake, the frosting. So between the cover-up and the nuts, that's where the pistachio WATERGATE cake comes from. So right now I've added a box of white cake mix. So to that, I'm also going to be adding one package. It's a 3-ounce package of instant pistachio pudding mix. I'm going to go ahead and add that to my mix as well. So in the late 50s, the 60s, and the early 70s, instant foods were kind of becoming all the rage with housewives. And so a lot of these recipes like WATERGATE cake with instant jellos and instant jello puddings and all that stuff just became super popular. This cake takes 3/4 cup of oil, so I'm going to pour that into my mix. It also either takes some ginger ale or lemon lime soda. I have some 7-Up, so I'm going to be adding a cup of that to the mix. So I'm going to add a cup of 7-Up. Look at that! Wow! Then we're going to be adding 3 eggs. I went into the store this week and I saw these ridiculous egg prices were over $6 for a dozen eggs. I almost fell off my chair. It was like that about a year ago. I think something's going on with the chickens again. I don't know. So it also calls for a 1/2 cup of coconut. I know my grandkids are not going to eat it if it's got coconut in it, so I'm going to skip that. It calls for a cup of chopped nuts. So I'm going to go ahead and put those in just a few minutes, but I want to blend this with the mixer first. So I added my pecans, 1 cup, and also I added a little tiny bit of almond milk just because this is so thick. I think when my grandma made this recipe, she put in like a lot more milk. It just wasn't this thick that I can recall, but I'm going to follow the recipe here because it doesn't call for any additional milk. So I'm using a bundt pan, but if you prefer to use a 2 round pans or a 9x13, you use whatever it is. And then all I'm going to do is spoon this into a greased pan. We're gonna put this cake in a preheated oven at 350 degrees for 45 minutes. So while our cake is finishing the baking process, we are gonna go ahead and make our frosting because I want this to sit up in the refrigerator for a little while our cake is cooling. So you have the option of using 2 of those Dream Whip, kind of the powdered whip topping, or you can use a tub, an 8-ounce tub of just the whipped topping that you can get from the refrigerated section of your grocery store. So we're gonna use this one. To this, we're gonna be adding another box of our pistachio pudding. Just like this. And then we're gonna be adding some milk to it. And we're gonna be putting in, it says 1.5 cups of milk. I'm gonna start off with a cup and then gradually add the rest of it in. Now I actually use almond milk in all of my cooking and baking. It just really works well for me. I do use some half and half occasionally, but I really like almond milk. It's lower in calorie and it just, I don't know, I just think it works good for me. So let me go ahead here and just whip this up. Now I'm going to put it in a different bowl because I want to refrigerate this until my cake is completely cooled, and then we're going to frost our cake. Now just like Jello pudding and Jello, this will keep thickening as it cools off. So we're just going to stick this bowl in the refrigerator for an hour or 2, and then when our cake is completely cooled, we'll go ahead and frost it, and I'll show you how to top it for a WATERGATE cake. Our cake is now out of the oven, and as you can see, I'm inserting a skewer and it comes out completely clean. So our cake is done. It was in there for the full 40 minutes, and I'm just gonna let it cool in the pan for a few minutes, and then I'm gonna take it out and just set it on a cake pan so that it can cool completely. Actually, I'm gonna take it out and put it on a wire rack. So as you can see, this cake came out absolutely beautiful. And so I am just gonna let it rest until it's completely cool to the touch, and then we'll frost it. I'm actually not sure if I'm gonna frost it tonight or in the morning. I want that frosting to really set up as much as it can with the pudding. So my topping is on my cake. It cooled enough last night. I wanted the topping to sit in the refrigerator overnight just so it would set. It's done a beautiful job. So all I'm gonna do now is add some pecans over the top. The recipe calls for 3/4 of a cup of pecans. I'm just gonna put what I have left from this bag on here. It'll be more than enough for me. Like I said, if you wanna substitute walnuts, you can do that. I'm just gonna kind of sprinkle those over the top. And then the other thing it calls for is a 1/2 cup of coconut. Now, as I said earlier, my grandkids won't eat coconut, so I'm only gonna put the coconut, maybe I'll put in like 1/4 of a cup, because I'm just gonna put it over the one side of the cake, because you know, they'll run away if they see coconut on it. So we'll go ahead and just put it on half our cake. I know it looks kind of silly, but that's the way it's got to be in my house. Work around my grandkids, they're my life. The last thing I'm going to add are some maraschino cherries. Now this is the one time I'm actually going to take the juice and kind of get it off of these cherries, because I don't want them interfering and putting juice all over the cake. So because these are just going to be sitting on the top, we're just going to kind of dry them off a little bit. And believe me, I love the juice on the maraschino cherries, so it's hard for me to do this, but all right, I think that might be enough. So all I'm going to do is just kind of run a paper towel over them just so they're not dripping on the cake. And then we're gonna place these cherries all over our cake. See how much juice I got off these cherries just by doing this? Really, whoop, we don't want just a stem, do we? All right. And there you go. See all that? Just from getting the juice off these cherries. Here is our WATERGATE cake. And as you can see, I did half coconut, but if you want to do whole coconut or leave the coconut off completely, it's up to you. Now, what I like to do after I make a cake or something like this is I kind of divide it up and send off pieces of it to family and friends. So I have a couple of people I'm going to be sending this to that I think will enjoy the coconut on it. So I'm going to go ahead and cut a piece with the coconut. I don't know if you've ever had a pistachio cake, but I'm not kidding. They just smell amazing. I just love the smell of this. So look at how beautiful that is. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and, if you see all this whipped cream frosting that I have, that's why they call it a cover-up, because there's so much frosting covering the cake. All right, that works out really good. Look how nice that looks to take to someone who may need a little lift to their day. If you like this video, give me a like, a thumbs up, or subscribe to my channel, and I'd love to have you as a new subscriber. Have a great day, everybody. Bye-bye.